Thank you for joining us. Former Prime Minister Sir James Mitchell over the weekend was in Grenada as part of the first-year celebration of the Dr. Keith Mitchell administration, which was returned to office in January 2013. According to Sir James in an interview via telephone with IKTV's Owen Batiste, his invitation to Grenada was to speak to ministers on matters in light of the global economic situation, both locally and internationally. Sir James highlighted some agencies and organizations which make a significant funding contribution to our region. These, he said, include the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and other lending and grant agencies. Sir James told the Keith Mitchell administration ministers that taxpayers can't afford to employ civil servants, but to generate income sources from donors to help reshape government infrastructures and social services. An accident at Maroon Hill in the Greggs area on Sunday afternoon left 3 dead and others nursing injuries, while another died on the leeward coast on Saturday. The accident at Maroon Hill on Sunday afternoon, with number plate of a truck TE214 owned and operated by Specs Concrete, was being driven by Nigel Peters, 33 years, of Richland Park. Reports state that 7 persons were on board, including the driver. Passengers Leopold Pinto Costello, 51, farmer of Hopewell, died on the spot, while Peter Phillips, 33 years, auto mechanic of Enhams, and Alwyn Toby, 53 years, mason of Mesopotamia, succumbed to their injuries at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. The driver, Nigel Peters, and passengers Cliff Richards and Brenton Grant are said to be hospitalized. Meanwhile, on Saturday morning in the Coles Hill area on the leeward side of the island, an accident claimed the life of Martina John, 51 years old, retired businesswoman of Villa who resides in Trinidad and Tobago. John came home to spend time for the Christmas holidays. Reports indicate that the Jeep PR361 in which Martina was traveling was driven by Victor Hunt, a 71-year-old retired businessman, went over an embankment in Coles Hill. Reports state John died on the spot. The driver, Victor Hunt, and another passenger, Brenda Hunt, are hospitalized. The weekend road fatalities bring the number to 5 thus far for the year. The following persons were arrested and charged with possession of controlled drugs over the weekend. Wesley Delplish, 29-year-old farmer of Greggs, was in possession of 756 grams of cannabis with intent to supply to another. Sidney Lavia, 38-year-old farmer of Owia, with 3,178 grams of cannabis with intent to supply to another at Owia. Levington Clouden, 52-year-old farmer of Chateaubelair, was in possession of 800 grams of cannabis with intent to supply to another at Richmond. Roy Lavia, 48 years, watchman of Owia, was in possession of 3,178 grams of cannabis with intent to supply to another at Owia. Meanwhile, on January 25, 2014, Carlos Macmillan, 53-year-old farmer of Park Hill, was arrested and charged with assaulting Aska Hooper of Park Hill with intent to commit an offense at Park Hill on January 24, 2014, and with making use of threats on the life of Aska Hooper at Park Hill. On January 25, 2014, Curtis Johnson, 42-year-old farmer of Overland, was arrested and charged without lawful excuse, destroyed a quantity of clothing valued at 1,605 EC dollars, the property of Lesroy Johnson of Overland and Francis Johnson of Newgrounds. On the 24th of January 2014, Kerwin George, 42-year-old laborer of Redemption Sharps, was arrested and charged with falsely representing himself to a police officer, a person employed in the public service and assumed to do an act by virtue of such employment. With theft of 1,000 EC dollars in cash, the property of Wilby Jackson of Belay. The cash was stolen in Kingstown. This country is still receiving relief supplies. An American aircraft arrived at the E.T. Joshua Airport over the weekend, with a number of supplies which are to be disbursed to persons who are affected by the December floods. Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, Howie Prince, was among those on hand to receive the supplies, which were earmarked for NEMO and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Red Cross Society. This follows the arrival recently at Port Kingstown of 20 tons of humanitarian supplies aboard the Dumont d'Urville, a vessel of the Armed Forces of the French West Indies. Mr. Prince is requesting persons to be patient and assured that persons in need will be assisted in a timely manner. More local news coming up after the break.